Well, staying with the EFF, speaking at the party's elections manifesto engagement in Eldorado Park, the leader, Julius Malema, said the party is open to working with the Umkhonto weSizwe party. Malema says he had been engaging with former President Jacob Zuma even prior to his announcement in support of the MK party, and have agreed to meet post the May 29 general elections to look at possible collaborations between the two. But what do we make of this possible collaboration? Well, we get some analysis now. We're joined by political analyst Professor Sethulego Matebesi. He joins us online. Prof, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I think let's start with what we're hearing now from the EFF leader, that talks set to take place between the MK party and the EFF post the 29th of May. Are you surprised?
Hi, good morning, Naledi, and good morning to the viewers. Not surprised at all. Remember, it first started with almost like personal attacks against the former president. Then it was tea parties in Nkandla, and from tea parties we're now moving towards a meet and greet. That's the nature of politics. You know, there's absolutely no permanent enemies, and that's why I say I am not surprised. But perhaps the question that we should also ask, what will be the consequences of such, or the implications of such a collaboration, particularly if you look in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, not necessarily in provinces like Northern Cape, perhaps also in the Free State, because you still have you act as a party which we know have already publicly declared that they will work, or they are working with MK. So very interesting times lies ahead, and one would want to see what is going to emanate out of this particular meeting between Malema and former President Jacob Zuma.
Yeah, you know, I think a really great place to almost start into that, what that collaboration would mean for the various spaces that you're talking about, such as the Free State and KwaZulu-Natal. I'd almost argue that we almost need to, analyze what each party's strengths are at the moment going into this election, and the kind of threat that they may pose to the governing party. In your view, could these two parties in their own individual spaces pose a significant threat to the ANC?
Not at all. I mean, they will not be able to overthrow the ANC. And I've stated it numerous times. I just don't know whether it's academics or whoever, where and how have they done their studies to declare that, or even predict that the ANC will get less than 40%. It's unheard of. And one perhaps should come out and peril to give the public confidence as to what are the factors. We know the challenges that the African National Congress is facing, but if you look at the performance of the EFF, even if they are going to grow, is the EFF now going to grow, irrespective of how much ground they gain in terms of engaging with South African voters? But what will give them that massive support in terms of electoral support? And I don't think it will go beyond. It's a 5% growth. And that is the highest that I can say that the EFF will grow. And here you've got MK, a new party. But I must say, for the very first time, you've got a party that had been formed 6-7 months ago in terms of their visibility and impact. I'm really impressed. I've seen they've got products that they have branded, but at the end of the day, where will they make an impact? It's KwaZulu-Natal, your Free State, to some extent, in provinces like Northern Cape, and you need a national footprint to be able to challenge the African National Congress. And these two parties on their own will not be able to do that. But we should never take away the influence that a collaboration like between a party like MK and EFF can have. I mean, the EFF on its own, with the little number of members that they had in Parliament, we all know they have sometimes dictated terms as to how certain issues have been deliberated upon. And that is the influence that perhaps post-elections we can talk about. But in terms of electoral support, I can't see that the two parties on their own will unseat the African National Congress.
And then, of course, you've got the leader of the EFF, Julius Malema, Prof, talking about, having other parties that synergize with the EFF from a policy point of view, talking about the PAC and AZAPO. I mean, the likelihood that those parties could strengthen the EFF with the MK to make a considerable difference post the 29th of May.
Well, I also have to ask who are those opposition parties, because you've got a so-called PAC led by the Democratic Alliance, and for me, I think that is the strongest opposition bloc. MK on its own will definitely disrupt the status quo. And I've heard some people say that MK will not be a threat. It's not only a threat in terms of electoral support. It is, all these court cases and the judgments that goes to MK's side, those things does have political leverage. And we need to look at them. What implication does this hold? But I can't see, and I just talk about parties like perhaps an IFP, but you ask yourself, is the IFP now going to leave the so-called pact that they already have with the other opposition parties? I strongly believe that we've got such a fragmented opposition, and that in itself makes it difficult to challenge the ruling party. The opposition was the strongest when Musima, and I'm not now speaking on behalf of him here, when he was still at the Democratic Alliance, there was a move towards a strong collaboration between opposition parties, but now they are too fragmented. And even on the left, if you look at where the EFF wants to go to, I think they will not have enough support to be able to reach their goal.
Yeah, I think what's quite interesting is you raised the issue of the role played by the Democratic Alliance, and I was about to raise an opinion piece that was written by the political analyst Melanie Verwoerd in the Daily Maverick this week, where, and it's headed up, this is how she starts, she says, if we end up with an ANC-EFF coalition, blame it on the Democratic Alliance. But what are the surprises that you think we could possibly see post the 29th of May elections? I mean, just over a month ago, people were touting whether or not we could possibly see the ANC in talks with the DA, and where that leaves the economic freedom fighters.
Yeah, no, well, we are going to see a lot of surprises post the 29th of May, and I've stated it many times, you can't trust politicians. They will say all these things that I say now, but come the 29th, because it's all about the personal priorities, sometimes, of our leaders, where they are jockeying for positions, and see how they can line up their own pockets. And if it was all about the interest of South Africans, we would have spoken a completely different story. But we should also ask, to what extent will these kind of collaborations alienate supporters going forward? I strongly believe that your typical South African voter, slowly, their eyes are opening. And what does that mean? They are now able to analyze. A granny somewhere in South Africa, a grandfather somewhere in South Africa, they are now able to understand what is going on. And I strongly believe that the moment if perhaps an EFF goes into bed with a Democratic Alliance, some EFF members will feel aggrieved that they've been sold out, and that we need to look in future what impact that will have. And I think these are some of the scenarios and issues that our leaders will have to look at. But I will not be surprised that even members who are now part of the DA so-called PAC will jump and join the African National Congress, because I strongly believe that even if the ANC gets around about 49, 48, they will still be, it's not the end of the African National Congress. They will be in a driving seat to end out, certain position to try and woo the opposition. Yeah,
the first thing that comes to mind is what a time to be alive then, right? To watch what happens after the 29th of May is really going to be quite something, Prof. And I want to just close it off with perhaps a final question, and that is, over the years we've watched the relationship between Julius Malema and the former President Jacob Zuma. I go back to, the come up, if you will, in the political ranks of Julius Malema, with much of the aid of former President Jacob Zuma, the fall of former President Jacob Zuma, much with the aid of Julius Malema. Should they meet for, let's say, a tea on the 29th of May, as I put it metaphorically anyway, Who has the leverage in that particular sit-down with these two leaders?
Yeah, no, I will just to briefly state that it's actually very commendable when leaders want to meet. We often first to jump when people incite violence and this is what Malema has been blamed for. But when people want to meet, it's a democratic process, let us allow that. But I strongly believe that, the former president is quite a formidable leader. Perhaps there will be some negotiation. But we also know that Malema is not somebody who easily backs out of, negotiations. He will forcefully put on the table, perhaps, the goals and priorities of the EFF. It's going to be very difficult to predict that one, but I think perhaps they will find each other going forward.
Yeah, perhaps.